You don't have a best guess. It's like it just depends on when the signals
Yeah,
start
it's gonna
firing.
this afternoon at 3. We're not gonna die from the lava. You're gonna die from the mud. Yeah, you don't want to be here. Hi, my name is Angel Rodriguez, and we're in my office building, which is called the Superagua building. And what we do here is make scientific instrumentation and machines to purify water that we sell at retail. And we've been doing this for a good 11, 12 years now. Carla and I, my wife Carla and I, have lived here for a little over 30 years. And this is sort of my hobby, more as much as anything else. So my specialties are hydrology and seismology, and we monitor the volcano. We have a small scientific network. We have river measuring levels. I mean, we could say that I make instrumentations to measure the flow in the Chiriqui Viejo, and I monitor it just as a personal sort of hobby. So Carla has her own hobbies. So yeah, we have a lot of hobbies. I mean, Carla has a very sophisticated garden, and so she spends a lot of time doing that. And then we travel a bit, and then we actually we're season ticket holders to the Costa Rica National Symphony. So every 3 weeks we go to Costa Rica and listen to the symphony, which is one of the best decisions we made in a long time. Which you can't do here because we don't have a real functioning symphony. So, but the classical music part is important, and I'd recommend that to anybody who really wants. It's a lot of work. I mean, you have to travel one day there, you have to be at the symphony, then you have to travel one day back, and you say, oh wow, that's a lot of trouble. Yeah, anything worthwhile is a lot of trouble. I don't think it's better. Actually, Carla and I are very good brewers, and so we bought a bucket kit. I mean, plastic buckets, and we brewed in these plastic buckets that for several years. But then we began to buy real fermentation equipment, and we began to make our own recipes and a little bit of electronics. We could control the fermentation temperatures, and so now we have a little brewery that's very sophisticated. We 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 almost don't make mistakes anymore like we made in the beginning, and we've only ever really had to throw out one batch, but we've had some ones that were hard to drink. That doesn't happen anymore. I mean, we really do nail them every time. So that's one of our joint hobbies that we work together. So Carla works in the garden, Carla does the recycling, I work here, and we we used to listen to news in the afternoon, and then we said we wouldn't listen to news. We would have one beer and listen to music. So it's just what we do now. So it's based on a necessity. Now you can go and get some pretty decent microbrews there, right? For $230, $240, $250 a bottle. But since we do it so well now, we can build a bottle of beer for 50 cents, better than the stuff that you can get, because we think that the beer is old after about 2 months. It's just not what it was. So we have very fresh beer. We have the flavors that we like, the intensity that we like. It's a fun hobby. I would recommend it to anybody. We drink one a day, so we have to brew every 3 weeks because we make 5-gallon batches. And 5 gallons is about 2 cases, 24 bottles in a case. It takes us about a month, one case per person per month. So one batch will do just that. And then when it gets closer to this time on Christmas, we brew a little bit more. So when we have company over, we have a beer. And now it's gotten to be that the beer making is just as much fun as the beer. As a matter of fact, it's more fun than the drinking of it. Then this whole building is my hobby. Like I call it my man cave, and there's no way to justify it. There's 11 of us that work here. And so, yeah, quite a hobby. I could make anything I can make just about anything I can think of. Let's say if it's smaller than a microwave, I can make it. Electronics, the boards, the motors, the sheet metal part. I mean, it's just we're very good at this. And what I can't make, I can bring in from China. And what I can't bring in from China isn't worth having. I mean, it's just they make everything, as it were. So yeah, I would consider myself a maker. And I think Carla would too. So Carla makes all the soap. Carla makes all the bread. We make all the beer. She does all the yogurt. She does all the kombucha, the what do the Koreans call that thing? The kimchi, the rotten cabbage. So we make almost. I'd say that if you look in Carla's pantry, there's nothing in a tin and there's nothing in a box hardly. Everything is either fresh from the market or we've made it. So somebody told me once that secret to a happy retirement was to pass good opportunities. And so I I have trouble with that sometimes. So no, we're not going to make beer for sale, even if it's a good opportunity. And so I let many things pass. And Carla and I have agreed that the garden will not turn into a business, a tourism or otherwise. We're not going to have people traipsing around the property. People come up and want to know how they can have a garden like that. And I said, yeah, just start. When Carla and I decided to retire, we made a big list. I mentioned the list of what we wouldn't work for 10 years. But one of the lists was that when we began to work, we'd always have 25 employees. So I'm employee driven. And so we don't have quite 25. So I've got less employees now, but I've got more than 20. And so I come to work every day so that those families have things and well paid jobs and opportunities. So my hobby is that, but it's, how can you come to a community and be separate from the community, isolated? It's not a good long term formula. So we're very involved. I mean, Carla's very involved with the community. I am very involved with the community. So it will never run out of projects, believe me. If it's not one thing, it's the other. Yeah, no, we'll just be here. I think we'll both be buried here. But, I mean, I've got a wonderful staff, very, very smart, very intelligent people that work here because the work is actually very fascinating. For a maker group, I mean, we have an unlimited budget for machinery and tools, and we just don't skimp on it. So if they need a whatever, we'll buy it. And then that in itself is a lot of fun. All our houses are my house, the business, my mom's house are all solar. I have all the purified water that I can drink. I have all the water that I can use because I live near a stream. So from that point of view, it's just a matter of getting enough to eat. And I don't eat very much anymore. I have a lot of beer. I drink beer a lot. And I wish I could drink more, but beer a day is enough. Carla and I built our house 30 years ago in the early 90s. We actually rented here for about 3 years before we decided to be here. I mean, we went to Sora and we went to Alto de Maria and we went to different places we rented those places for a season. El Valle, we rented for a season. And then finally we rented here for 3 years and then decided to build our house. So that happened in 91 to 94 was that whole process. But 93 is squarely when we built it. Well, it's high, it's cool, it's rural, it's quiet, it's out of the way. I mean, we don't care for the city. So we knew we wanted to be at the higher elevations. We're not beach people. We're mountain people. And at the time, 35 years ago, Volcano was a very quiet place. There were no expats here. I mean, really, we saw that wave begin to happen. We can remember the first new faces to show up, but it was just quiet. Not so much now. In general, we had made a decision when Carla and I met. We wrote up a list of things that we would do, and we had decided that when we had a certain amount of assets, a certain net worth, we would quit working. And so that happened when we were 70. That is, I was 40 and she was 30. So we quit. We sold everything, sold the books, sold the baskets, the rugs, the bed, the couch. I mean, just everything. We bought an Airstream. And we spent 10 years in the Airstream. Just 2 mountain bikes, 1 tandem, 2 kayaks, all the hiking gear that you could carry, and spent 10 years in the U.S. Dry camping. And when it was too cold, we'd go down to Baja and live in Baja for a while. When it was too cold in Baja, then we'd come here. And when it was time to go back up, we'd go back up, and we spent a lot of times. When we quit, we had promised each other that we wouldn't work for 10 years. And when 10 years was up, I began to work again. I sort of love working. I've seen a lot of changes. I'll sum them up for you. When we bought our property, which is about 3 hectares, we paid 15 cents a meter. So what can I say? I mean, that's how long ago. Things were sold by the hectare, so we were paying, we paid $1,500 per hectare. I mean, it used to be there was 1 hardware store, 1 supermarket, 1 pharmacy. So now it's a very different place. We still love it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the same thing. It's not what it was. Here, what we do basically is we sell instrumentation for measuring water quality and water flow from a well-known company called Xylem. That is, we're the representatives for Xylem. And so they sell sensors and gizmos that measure water quality and water flow in all situations. So we do a lot of that. It includes other things. We sell buoys for ports. We just sold 3 buoys to the Panama Canal. I'll be going there this afternoon to calibrate one of them. And then we sell seismic equipment. We sell seismometers from a company named Nanometrics, which is also the best in the world, best in class. And we also build seismometers. So we do a lot of building of smaller instruments. And so we have a little seismic network that we run called Red Sísmica Baru. So all the people that you see in this part of here are involved in either water quality or hydrology in more general terms, or seismology in several terms. And we make special instruments that we design, develop, and then try to sell. So one of them went very well. Raspberry Shake was one of my creations. And we ran that through Kickstarter and did very well. We make things, the river sense that you saw in the printer there. We make an instrument that's pretty, I don't know, non-intuitive. We have a box that has a vibration center, which comes from seismology, and then the software comes from hydrology. So seismologists have never thought of it, and hydrologists have never thought of it, and so we've combined it into a sensor that can give us the activity of a river without being in the river. I mean, we just bury it next to the river, and then we send out a message every minute or every 10 minutes, and that's something that we're pushing now. And we sell another one that's very similar to monitor lahars, or the onset of a lahar. And lahar is a sort of a river of mud that comes out of a volcano when the conditions are right, which can be very destructive. I mean, lahars, flows that, hot pyroclastic flows, things like that, we can actually measure and to give warning. And then we have some other earthquake warning things that we're working on that will actually change Earth vibration into Mercalli. And Mercalli is an intensity scale. That is that a magnitude 6 in Japan, we don't feel it, but a magnitude 6 right here would scare you to death. But the Mercalli scale is an intensity scale based on what people feel. And so we have a thing now that you can nail to your wall, and it'll monitor the earthquake, and then it'll put up the Mercalli color that's appropriate and say, yeah, it's shaking, yeah, you're scared, but really there's nothing to worry about in your building. We do research and development at this end of the building. We do a lot of it. It's continuously what we do. And then we have a water purification business where we build water purifiers. Catherine over here is the person that in charge of the water purifiers. We have 3 water purification stores, one in Volcan, one in David, one in Bugava, looking to build one in Boquete. And so we build those from scratch. I mean, we do the software, we do the electronics, we do the electromechanical parts, we just make the whole thing. And so that requires some work from most of us when we're going there. So Junior does the software part in generally. Miguel Angel is design. She's design and actually the implementation of it. But so we do water quality. And those are the main businesses that we do here. I graduated from the University of Washington, Seattle. That's where I met Carla. And I have a degree in marine biology and chemistry in the oceanography department that I got. And never did that. When I graduated, I got a job in a fisheries department building because I was very associated. And I worked there for about 2 weeks, and it was in a 3rd sub basement with no windows and people who didn't like each other. And one day I just quit 3 weeks into my career, into my life work, and opened a bike shop. So I had for 25 years I did cycling, built bikes, built tandems. We were one of the first frame building shops, and so we'd make custom bikes, made a lot of money. It was a good business. Carla and I would go riding every day. I mean, cycling was our life. Tandem was everything. So then that point happened when we realized that in our life plan, we had reached that point of that net worth that I told you about. So we sold the bike shop, sold a house, sold the knickknacks, and stopped working. when we're 70. And that's a very key move. I mean, we just enjoyed a lot of physical things when we were physically very able to do them, fast and strong, and yeah, couldn't do them now. I mean, here's a guy who had a little machine shop and built bikes and very mechanical. All of a sudden, he's in Volcan and needs to do something. And so I was going to start to build telescopes because I've always had an interest in. And then I realized that even on the best of days, this isn't a great place for a telescope. I mean, it's a lot of humidity in the air, even when you think it's clear. So I looked for another natural science thing to do, and I started building seismometers because when we built our house, we didn't have water. So we pumped our water from our well, and we didn't have electricity, so we had solar panels, and that was fine. And we didn't have a telephone, didn't care for it. We didn't have internet. Even at that time, I was into internet, and so we decided we couldn't live without internet. All our hobbies are internet based, and so I I contacted a supplier, Cable and Wireless in David, and they said, "Well, we can deliver internet to you, but in David." And so I built a relay tower, and I built 3 relay towers to relay it with microwaves to our house. So I had 4 towers. And at the same time, I had a seismology hobby where I was making seismometers just on the workbench, hacksaws, basic hand tools. And then I realized that at every one of the towers, I could extract some signals, and then I could locate. I mean, so I had a seismometer in David, a seismometer halfway up, a seismometer here, a seismometer just by your place, that little tower place on top of that mountain there, and a tower and a seismometer at my house. So I had 4 stations. And so I used to do the locations and then post the results at the hardware store just on a bulletin board. And one day, somebody from the University of Panama came up and they said, "Well, who does this?" And they said, "Well, this Sahel, he does it." And it was the director of the Institute of non-existing. I mean, the institute was there, but since they'd just come out of the hard times of the dictatorship, there was no network. I had the only network in Panama. And he said, "Well, can you help us?" And so I started helping them rebuild their network, and one thing turned into another, and I just started building more and more better seismometers, and really enjoyed the process. And then in Central America, the word got around, and people wanted me to help them with their stuff. Um, One of the things that my network had that no other network in Central America has was that my network was digital and all the other networks were analog. And I didn't know that they were analog when they said, you have the most sophisticated network in Central America. I said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, yours is all digital. It comes in over internet, and you collect it." And I wrote the software to do the locations. And then we had a big conference here in Volcan, and the Norwegians, University of Bergen, was the host. And we had 54 seismologists spend a week here studying my network and calibrating sensors. And then after that, everybody in Central America knew who I was. And then they wanted me to come help them with their network here and there. And then one thing worked onto another. And you remember Mount St Helens, right? Well, this volcano is just like Mount St Helens. And when Mount St Helens blew up, nobody had ever seen that happen, what happened in Mount St Helens. I mean, it was a brand new explosion. I mean, it's just called a ladder explosion. I mean, the side of the mountain swelled up and blew out. And so nobody recognized it. And so volcanoes were, things that threw up steam and then did that kind of stuff. And so we had some volcanologists here in 2009 because I had noticed some strange rumblings because I had seismometers on it, my own. The probability the day after it went quiet that it would blow up the next day is the same as the probability that it'll blow up today. That is that the time sequence is so volcanic in its scale. And the last eruption that it had was about 700 years ago, people suspect, with about a 700-year cycle, 500, 700 people, that it 500 years, 700 years for a volcano is basically nothing. It's like you rolled over in your bed, and a few minutes later you rolled over again. So yeah, it's an active volcano, and it will give messages. I mean, people knew that Mount St. Helens was going to blow up. They had some sensors on it, and they could feel the intensity come up and up and up. And then they put more instruments on it, and they actually declared the exclusion zone. And the people, they said stay out of this and stay out of that, and then that's why nobody died. But this volcano will probably do the very same thing. So it'll begin to change if we're watching, if we're listening, and then we'll really instrument it. And then I think that when this volcano is going to blow up, they'll know it down to the few hours. Well, Carla and I used to ride from Seattle down to Olympia, down to Mount St. Helens. It's 154 miles on the tandem, just because we were waiting for it to blow up. I mean, it was something that was happening. I mean, it was smoke and shaking and in the news, and everybody knew that it was coming, and they began to make the danger zone bigger and bigger. And I think it was not, I mean, it was surprising, but not a surprise. And surprising is the way that it blew up. This lateral explosion, I mean, it ejected so much dirt and garbage that it surprised everybody, but they had time to evacuate, and that's what'll happen here. So I wouldn't be too concerned.
You don't have a best guess. It's like it just depends on when the signals
Yeah,
start
it's
firing.
this afternoon at 3. Yeah, all those stones came out of there. Every one of them. Every stone that you can find around here came from that volcano. Beyond a doubt. I mean, there's no. When that event happened, which recent, less than 1,000 years ago, the river that's over there, Chiriqui Viejo, used to flow out this way. And it just came down and it just pushed it against that mountainside and changed the course of the river. And why our river's over there and not over here. Because when you look at it, you can see that that's what happened. But yeah, there'll be changes. Yeah, you don't want to be here.
Just get away and let it happen.
That's right. It's not a. But I will tell you that the on the drive to Kaisan, that whole geology of from here to Kaisan and then down is is characterized by little mountains, little hillsides, and poor drainage. That is, hillsides and swamps with poor drainage. Sometimes they don't drain; they make little pools, and there are some just beyond when you go past your place. That wasn't discovered until '81. Till they're called hummocks, and it's the geology of a lateral explosion. I mean, it's like somebody uh, dumped a dump load of stuff very quickly, and it just went out, and so it looks like this. And that entire geology is a consequence of the lateral explosion of Volcan Baru. It goes all the way out to Progreso almost. Paso Canoas, when you go to Puerto Armuelles,
Yeah.
when you come out of there, there's the water plant, and there's a little hill that you go down. That's where it ended. Another place where you can see it very clearly is that traffic circle they built at Cuesta Piedra on your right. It doesn't drain anywhere. Central Shidley has no reason to be there. It's just a pile of rubble. And so on the other side, where there's a little house on a hill, that's another little volcanic hill. And so it's just how the dirt settled. I mean, so this stuff was dumped out, and then the rain washed it out and immediately made little hillsides and some big rocks and many little rocks, and you can see those. But it didn't have a natural drainage that you would find with where river flows. And so that's why we have the messy geology from here to Kaisan. They're called hummocks. It has an infinite source of material under it. I mean, so it'll just well it up. What you see is the top of Volcan Baru is really the resurgence dome, and St. Helens has one. And so the old volcano, you can see the rim of the crater, like at Paso Ancho, back there. It's like a ridge that goes around. And it's also over here. So there's a big thing that got blown out. All that big caldera got blown out. Take a Google Maps and you'll see that horseshoe. There's another one on Tisingal just over there. That horseshoe where all that material was ejected out. And then it began to build again. And that's what we see is what we think of as the top of Volcan Baru. It's really just a resurgence dome. And it grew for a long time. And it could continue to grow without exploding. And it could continue to grow for centuries, millennia. We don't know. It's a volcano. It will begin to swell like St. Helens did. I mean, that the volcano will get bigger because it's bringing material up underneath. And that swelling cracks a lot of rocks and makes dirt. So if you have seismometers around, we'll notice the seismicity increase very easily. I mean, it's very easily. and then you'll put more instruments on it, and they'll put instruments that will measure the deformity that they can tell where it's swelling and where it's not swelling, and then they'll see that it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and hotter and shakier and shakier, and those signs will be there. So it will announce itself. And they can all that sequence that I just mentioned could take hundreds of years or a couple of months, but we'll know. I mean, St. Helens wasn't a long time. They'd been obviously studying it, but by the time they knew that something was going on, it was less than a year, I think. It was, and it's what enlightened us to these volcanoes. And so it's just now reached the about the same height of the old middle of. I mean, that thing was immense. I mean, it was much higher. If you extrapolate the cone, the volcano was very big. So it could be bigger. It could be messier. It could be, but it's a dangerous volcano. People think that the what kills you is when you think of volcano, what do you think of? Lava, yellow things coming down the you know lava. But if you think of really a lot of volcanoes like Crater Lake, it's full of water, and this. So I think of them as hydrothermal system. That is, it's a combination of water and heat, and so what kills people is the mud. I mean, if you look at the big disasters, volcanic disasters that happen, it's just a lot of water mixed with a lot of ash coming down at a high velocity and bury everything. And there's example after example after example. So we're not going to die from the lava. You're going to die from the mud if you hang around. But it's nothing that you should worry about. It really isn't. And so most of the seismology that people here feel, I mean, when they say, "Oh, I felt it last night," did you feel that? And it didn't happen here in the volcano. It happened down in Punta Burica. And that's part of the instrumentation that we're building, is that a person could have it in their house and say, "Oh yeah, it shook, but no big deal." So that just to calm people. I mean, and actually the first ones we're making are for office buildings and things like that. So yeah, the volcano is not an issue. I'm not saying it's not going to blow up today at 3, but it's not. The earthquakes are a bigger threat to all poorly constructed buildings that are not built. When we have a real strong earthquake, my house will fall down. I mean, it was poorly built, and I didn't recognize that at the time because I just didn't know anything about it. Really a very badly built house. But I'd say that if there was a strong earthquake close to Volcan, let's say a 6.4 within 10 miles, which I don't know if that could happen or not, I'd say 30-40% of the buildings would probably collapse. This one would probably collapse. I can show you building damage here that just from earthquakes that happened in Puerto Muelles area. You can make any building not fall down in an earthquake. It's just a matter of money, how much steel you put in it, how much rebar, and how much you spend on the construction. But the seismic velocities, which at 30 meters and 100 meters, which is what engineers use to determine the seismoresistivity that they need to meet, are not met here. There are a lot of things that you can do to make your house safer. I mean, that bookshelf there should be tied to the wall, and the books in it should probably have a lip on there so that the books don't come crashing out. And things that could fall. I mean, the danger is really from things falling on you that you have to wait. So if you have, in our house, we have a whole wall that's covered with lajas, these flagstones that they take out of the volcano, that were stuck on there with a thin sheet of cement, for the lack of a better word. And those things will come crashing down. And, one of those lajas that probably weighs 30, 40 pounds crashing down on your head could hurt about it. And so it's a preparation that if you have your TV on a little table, that the TV not fall on your baby, that things that move anyway will move much stronger. So to secure things that might fall, that the refrigerator, the filing cabinet, the drawers will come out and it'll fall over, and the refrigerator, the doors are open and all the ketchup will come streaming out. So your house may not fall down, but it could look like it was in a blender. And there are small things that you can do to make that things up. So things that have wheels on them, put the little wheel locks down, and things that are heavy and high, put them down with glue. They call it a museum something. It's just like a putty, and you set it on the putty, and makes it get there. So anywhere where there's things that will move and fall, my books. And if my bed were there, then those books would come crashing on me. And the big volcano books are very heavy and they could hurt. So I think that that's a fair thing. And if there is a big volcano, you can be sure that the internet won't work, and that the water won't work, and the electricity won't work, and the cell phone won't work. So be prepared for those things. And if if as it happened, a couple of bridges fall, let's say bridges coming out of David going to the Panama City, where the truck traffic stops on a big earthquake, even though your house didn't fall, then things would have to come in through air or boat, and so everything would get scarce. And so that kind of preparation, I think, is more worthwhile than worrying about the ground opening up and you're falling into it. So I wouldn't be too concerned.
Thanks so much to Angel for the interview and tour of his building. If you have any questions, be sure and leave them in the comments.